and come back to class. Isn't that, I had that feeling. When I hear that, I think, oh, school, I got to come back. Right. And we are learning from each other, aren't we? We're learning. We're comparing notes, we're exchanging ideas. This is it's almost like a laboratory, aren't we? And especially now that we've gotten past the keynotes and the opening, there's a lot of decorum we have to do. That's very important. And now, there's no tie, see? We roll up our sleeves. Yes, you can take off your tie if you want. Anyway, I'm glad, I'm Chris Burns, I'm back. It's just me right now. Thin will be the next panel tomorrow morning. And this one is about one of the 4 FAO betters, better production, and how to make livestock production more efficient and sustainable, how farmers have made progress on this, what more should be done. And we're tapping expertise from all of you around the world. That's what's the beauty of this, from all kinds of sectors and walks of life. A couple of tech tips. Check the program to see the latest updates, because we've added and subtracted some speakers. The webcasting is recorded for playback. Hello, everybody. For those of you watching webcasting, hello. Good to see you out there. Interpretation, great job. 6 languages. So the speakers, please keep that in mind. Please speak clearly and not too fast. Let's see, coffee between 1500 and 1600 outside there in the plenary hall. And silence all your electrical gadgets, including your phones, please. Hashtag sustainable livestock. You can also see it there on the screen over there and over there. Hashtag sustainable livestock. Be active. Let's try to trend this thing, if we can, on the social networks. Okay, let's take a look at a video now, and then we'll get started. Let's see the video.
Hundreds of millions of small-scale producers and pastoralists rely on livestock for their living. In addition to providing nutritious animal source foods, livestock produces products like fiber and leather, and a wide range of services beyond ecosystem services, employment, income, insurance, and draft power. These are important for small-scale producers and provide income for a multitude of traders and processors along different value chains. Improved feeding, adapted genetics, good animal health and welfare, good husbandry, and efficient information technology are driving up the productivity of livestock. Small-scale producers require access to information, services, and inputs to fully utilize the potential of livestock. The sustainable transformation of livestock systems should ensure that natural resources are used efficiently to minimize environmental externalities. Circular economy principles can better connect crop and livestock value chains at a larger scale. Information and communication technologies can play a crucial role in enhancing productivity and contribute to environmental and economic sustainability. Along the value chain, these technologies contribute to reducing food loss and waste, improving food safety, and adding value to eggs, milk, and meat. The One Health approach is crucial for tackling health threats at the interface between animals, humans, and the environment, thereby helping to reduce antimicrobial resistance, ensure food safety, and prevent future pandemics. Sustainable livestock production systems play a crucial role in achieving better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life, leaving no one behind. The first global conference on sustainable livestock transformation provides a forum for all to meet the challenge.
So there was mention of the One Health, and there's going to be a side event later today after all of our discussions. So hopefully you can get to that. Let me introduce the chair of this event on better production, Monique Eloi, Director General of the World Organization for Animal Health. You are a doctor in veterinary medicine yourself. From this better production session, what in your dream o' vision would you like to see come out of it? Monique, please. Yes.
Thank you, Chris. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that is really a pleasure and an honor for me to chair this first session, Better Production, of the first global conference organized by FAO, to discuss the future for sustainable livestock and the transformations that we must together devise and subsequently put into effect, and that was rightly highlighted by the FAO DG today morning. Livestock production is at the heart of several major global challenges, and we need to help the parties concerned meet the challenges they face. I should like to, therefore, thank and warmly thank the Director General, Mr. Chu, for having initiated this conference. Livestock farming provides the everyday work and the chief means of subsistence for millions of families that are among the world's poorest. This activity, in its many different forms, makes a crucial contribution to combating food and nutritional insecurity, particularly in regions where arable land is scarce. Livestock can also be a means of protecting one's savings and even be a source of financial independence for many women. Livestock farming also includes practices that belong to the ancestral traditions of many nomadic populations. And I'm quite sure all of us are also in mind some village festivities that mark transhumance in springtime, for example, in my country. Livestock farming is therefore not just a link in a production system, but it's also a social and cultural heritage that needs to be preserved. Of course, the question of its future is complex, and as we need to take into account the many external factors influencing the way this activity is carried out, such as environmental and health issues and societal expectations regarding animal welfare conditions. For my part, as Director General of the World Organization for Animal Health, I consider the health and welfare of animals to be one of the pillars of tomorrow's livestock production. That is why OA has rightly been involved in many years in the debate on these issues and is strengthening links with producers, which are at the front line, the preliminary sentinels in the field, and the preliminary beneficiaries of veterinary services. Animal diseases cause production losses that might potentially be avoided. That is today no longer acceptable in a world where food insecurity and malnutrition are still rampant. On the other hand, many animal diseases can also pose a serious risk to human health. We need to be better able to anticipate and prevent their transmissions. A profound and sustainable transformation of the livestock sector can now be seen as a necessary step, not only to strengthen food and national and nutritional security, but also in the hope of overcoming the many different constraints and negative externalities inherent in the existing system. As recalled by Jimmy Smith today morning, the livestock sector must be better recognized and better supported. As you will by now have understood, I'm extremely happy that FAO has taken the initiative to hold this conference after having recently established the subcommittee on livestock chaired by Ambassador Cherniak. OA has long been an actor in the global debate on livestock issues and will continue to play its role of livestock leader. We stand ready to engage actively in the debate that begins today, for our mandate and our programs enable us to be an operational actor in the transformation of the livestock sector. I'm firmly convinced that the strengthening of our partnership with FAO will be fruitful on this matter, and I look forward to a new vitality in our collaboration so that we jointly work to contribute to a better future for young generations. And now, Chris, I'm very looking forward to listening to all the panelists. Thank you.
Excellent. Merci beaucoup, Monique. Merci. So let us move on to this idea, this concept of not just livestock, but also other kinds of agriculture, and seeing how you can integrate integrated and context-specific approaches for sustainable livestock production. And who better to talk about that than Shirley Tarawali, Assistant Director General, International Livestock Research Institute, and Chair of the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock. I might mention that Shirley has been 35 years in livestock management. That's right. Including work in Nigeria, integration of crop and livestock farming systems. I find that quite intriguing, Shirley. Please.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Monique, as well. And thanks to the organizers for this opportunity to be part of this landmark conference. It's a real privilege to share some thoughts with you now, but also to be part of these important discussions that will shape priorities for investments in research, technology, and financially to foster a more sustainable livestock sector that contributes towards sustainable and resilient food systems in the future. I'd also like to congratulate the organizers, not just for the ambitions of the conference, but for the title they gave me. It talks of integrated, context-specific, and sustainable. And I think all these dimensions are critical if animal agriculture is to contribute towards better production in ways that address that dual challenge that I think we're all grappling with: how to address the climate crisis and how to feed and nourish millions of people at the same time. I also think that we need to be much more responsive and nimble, and I'll return to that at the end of my intervention. Let's ask first, though, why do we need sustainable livestock production? The challenges seem evident, and the recent SOFI has highlighted over 700 people who are hungry, 700 million, people who are hungry. If only it was 700. 2.4 billion who are food insecure, a third of humanity. 3 billion unable to afford a healthy diet, which would include milk, meat, and eggs for sure. And 148 million stunted children. Many of us here are livestock people, and we would say, well, the answer is more livestock production. But it seems maybe it's not quite that simple. Because on the one hand, we have, I think, really good frameworks under which that could operate. We have the Sustainable Development Goals. We have the UN Food Systems Summit and its related processes. 126 country transformation pathways, many of which include livestock. We have the Committee on Food Security and its high-level panel of experts. Fantastic frameworks. And on the other hand, we know, and we've known for a long time, and it's working in some places, how to improve livestock production. Those who follow after me in this session are no doubt going to give you some of the technical details of that. So what's the problem here? So this is where I'd like to consider those three dimensions articulated in my title. And I'm going to also touch a few examples from Ilri's work in Africa and Asia, not least because that's what I know most about, but also because that's where I think there's going to be most demand and most change. Firstly, let's consider context. If we think about demand and supply context, and we look at the recent OECD, FAO outlook for the next 10 years, it really emphasized for me how global numbers can mask regional and national context specificities. For example, dairy production expected to grow by 17% globally, but a third of that production in India, Pakistan, and a few African countries. Meat production predicted to grow 2.5% annually over that 10-year period. but an average in upper middle income countries of 14%. And it's not just any meat. Half of that is expected to be poultry. We heard this morning about that commodity and production system context and how that also varies tremendously, depending on how we're talking about poultry meat, eggs, beef, lamb, dairy. Are they being produced in the backyard, in a medium-scale growing enterprise, or it's a large-scale, efficient, and increasingly sustainable commercial enterprise? No matter where we start, all of these different production enterprises and the related ecosystems need to become more sustainable. And I think the changes that need to be made will look very different depending on where we start. And that sometimes causes us confusion, if you like, in the livestock narrative, because it looks so very different in terms of the route that we must take. So, examples very briefly of context-specific improved production. I mentioned livestock master plans. Thanawat also mentioned that this morning, which ILRI, together with FAO and CIRAD, have been working on with many countries to help better prioritize investments in the livestock sector. What should we work on first, dairy or beef, or what? Should we look at the feed or the health or the genetics, for example? Or some of the work that we've been doing on harnessing genetic diversity in poultry, in dairy cattle, using the latest technologies along with on-the-ground ways of getting that delivered. Looking for heat stress tolerance in dairy cattle as well. If we look at integrated, we need to bring together all those dimensions of productivity. Health and breeds and feeding, nutrition of the animal need to come together. And those productivity dimensions have to come together in the context of input and output markets, policies, institutions, and importantly, new business opportunities, especially for young people and for women. In the context of 1CG that ILRI is a member of, we're leading an initiative that tries to do exactly that. Bring together those pieces, the best health, feeds, genetics, in specific contexts, specific locations for specific commodities, and integrating those in that wider social, economic, institutional ecosystem, if you like. And then if we talk about sustainable, the plenary overview also highlighted the importance of considering synergies and trade-offs across the four betters, because better production does not necessarily mean more production. Sustainability in all its dimensions has to also be addressed. So better production must address better nutrition, must address better environment, and must address better lives. Examples of improved production, enterprise that's heading towards sustainability. We heard about those kind of examples from Australia and from New Zealand this morning. We know in the US as well, incredible improvements in the dairy sector, lowering the carbon emissions per unit of output. And predictions too that the same could happen in South Asia's dairy sector, for example, not by switching necessarily to a large-scale industrial grain-based system, but better use of what's available on the ground. And indeed, we can turn waste into feed. In West Africa, we've worked on a project we're turning cassava peels, an environmental hazard, into feed, generating feed, income, and jobs. We're supporting countries to have accurate Tier 2 emissions data so that they have both baseline data but also a way of showing when those production efficiencies are improving. And we know that well-managed pastoralism, the right supportive environment, opportunities for both production but also that important environmental stewardship that those systems play are really, really crucial as well. Finally, I highlighted that if livestock is to continue to contribute to better production in all these sustainable ways, we need to be nimble and responsive. And we've seen in the past few years, pandemic, conflict, climate crisis, we need to be able to respond much quicker. And I think one way to do that is through multi-stakeholder engagement. I chair the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock, and we really try to help all types of stakeholders come together to foster a more sustainable livestock sector. Recently, we looked in a series of webinars at some of the drivers for livestock systems, and what does that mean? How can we be better prepared to respond? We'll be revisiting that at a global meeting in Thailand at the end of October as well. The Global Agenda brings together all types of stakeholders. We also have the FAO committee, subcommittee on livestock, that's bringing the public sector together. And we have the coalitions that came out of the Food Systems Summit, which we're also working with to try and ensure really good connections there. So it seems we have, and perhaps the initiative that Tanawat spoke about this morning that comes out of this conference, we've got some really good pieces. And those pieces present opportunities to add together to foster a more sustainable and responsive livestock sector across the world. One where better production is context-specific, better production is integrated, better production is sustainable. These are opportunities that must be grasped and must be grasped now. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Stay where you are, because we have a couple of minutes to take a quick question or two. If we start with the governments, somebody from a government would like to speak first? Anyone? If reaction to what Shirley said, and also maybe what's happening in your country, or is there an intergovernmental representative who would like to speak on that? I find it very interesting because in 3 days I'm going to be in Lithuania. There's a Baltic conference by the European Commission Environment where they're talking about interdependence between fishing and agriculture and other things, and how you have to pay attention to all of that to make it work in terms of becoming sustainable. Yeah. So it's a very interesting issue, tough nut to crack around the world. Is there a non-governmental that would like to talk? Ask a question to Shirley. Or private sector. If not, we move on. Okay. All right. Let's go to Ruud. And thank you very much to Shirley. Big hand to Shirley, please. Thank you. And in this discussion this afternoon, everybody can ask a question, really. Ruud Thijsens, Chairman of the Board, International Feed Industry Federation. That's a huge issue in the Netherlands, I know. But then, of course, you're dealing with more than that. You have been over 30 years in agro and food, so you know what you're talking about. This is the role of animal feed industry in supporting sustainable livestock production. Ruud, please.
Thank you very much. And I'm not going to discuss Dutch politics today. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to be invited here on behalf of the International Feed Industry Federation to discuss pathways towards a more sustainable livestock sector. It's a pressing and urgent issue, asking for clear visions and bold decisions. And I do express the hope that this conference can contribute to building these visions and shape these bold and necessary decisions. Before I enter to the key elements of my presentation, I'd like to say a few words about the unprecedented times we are in. The crisis, which were also highlighted by the previous speaker, of the last few years, leading to logistical nightmares and strongly volatile prices, affecting every one of us everywhere around the globe. And it made one thing very much clear. The animal production sector is an essential part of our societies, serving different roles. Serving, first of all, and it's also said this morning before, but we need also to look with this very specific lens to what we are discussing here today, the livelihood of more than 1 billion people around the globe. And at the same moment, the second important role, producing human nutrition, delivering calories and proteins. I'm not here to argue that the amount of animal-derived protein should stay as it is. I'm here to discuss future developments and take these two perspectives into the equation if we are discussing visions, challenges and options. But I like also to draw your attention to the third part of the third lens, basically, and that is the livestock sector is converting human inedible proteins in human edible proteins. And that's also a very important role, taking into account that 40% of the land is not suitable for crop production. So, taking this as a starting point, let's look to the role of the feed industry. What are we doing? A lot of people are saying, guys, you are just bringing a lot of raw materials, but that's not what we are doing. We are delivering precise animal nutrition necessary at the different stages of life of the animal, taking food safety as the cornerstone and realizing that feed cost is a major cost of the production of many of the farmers. So animal nutrition is about science. It's the science of feed ingredient selection. It's the science of basically developing and bringing into practice of specialty feed ingredients like enzymes, or more recent, like the additives we developed to reduce methane emission. It's the science of least cost optimization, looking to the raw materials, looking to the prices, looking to the nutritional profile, and bringing that all together and have the least cost optimization. But at the same moment, and that's more recent, also the science of least impact optimization on CO2 emission, as an example. And it's the science of benchmarking, data sharing, and helping the industry and farmers to make steps forward. That is what we are delivering. Who are we? IFAF is representing 80% of the global feed industry, the global feed volume, by the connection of their regional associations, like the South African Feed Industry Association, and many of the global companies active in this industry. And we don't work into isolation. We understand our societal responsibilities. For that we cooperate with FAO, with Codex Alimentarius, with WHO, and many others. But let's step back. What do we see if we are looking around the globe? Because there are many big differences if you are working in a global industry. First of all, and that's a good thing, we see one global theme, and that's the antimicrobial resistance and the fight for that, and the ask for help to develop nutritional strategies and nutritional innovations for that. But after that, we see a very different picture. With, for example, in the developed countries, the reduction of animal protein and all the possibilities and challenges which that brings. But also the discussion about circular raw materials. In the developing and developed countries, clearly sustainability is out there, is going to be implemented in supply chains. We are discussing CO2 emissions throughout the supply chain. I'm coming back to that a little bit later. But do not forget the pressing issue of food security in the low and middle income countries. So a very different picture around the globe. I have not the time to discuss it all, but I like to highlight a few items out of this. First of all, in the high income countries, this discussion about the reduction of animal-derived proteins. That's a discussion which is out there. At the end, nothing is growing just by the air. Everything has to be fed. So it is also something which can help and can deliver opportunities for the industry. It's there, it's a discussion, we have to take it serious and we have to take steps forwards. But also the discussion on CO2 emission and methane emission reductions. What I said, this is out there. This is in the industry, this is being operationalized. But also the discussion on circular raw materials, bringing in completely new feed ingredients, like insects at this moment. But I'd like to highlight one pressing issue, and that's land use. By all the growth, there is not more land. This is clearly what's on the table today. About 78% of the land is being occupied for producing crops to feed animals. And we have to take this discussion very serious. And what I'd like to highlight is a brilliant French research which brought forward a new key performance indicator. The key performance indicator they are highlighting is how much human edible protein do I need to produce 1 kilogram of animal protein. And there are many differences in the different sectors. But this is, and I will not discuss details and definitions, but this is about vision. This is a key performance indicator we have to start working on. This is a large transition, and the good news is basically in their research they found, in every sector they found systems which are able to deliver this below 1. Then you are transferring more inedible proteins in human edible proteins. This is clearly a very interesting piece of research. Is this a large transition we are discussing? Yes. Should we walk this pathway and look and investigate it further? The answer is yes. Should we develop a step-by-step approach to do so? The answer is yes, and we should start today. But at the same moment, like I said, in the developed and developing countries, sustainability is full on the agenda, and we have to work towards that, and we have to implement it. This is one of the reasons why the Global Feed LCA Institute has been developed together in close collaboration also with FAO and many of you in the room, because we said we should not discuss about data, we should discuss about solutions, and for that you need data. And that's basically what the GFLI is delivering us. But don't forget the true and big importance of food security in the low and middle income countries. It's a totally different discussion. It's about professionalization, it's about institutionalization, it's about building knowledge and building also regulatory frameworks, but it is a way we have to do because it's of huge importance. What are we offering? We are offering 250,000 scientists, technicians, out in the field there, who are working to that. And how is IFAF approaching this? We have 3 pillars. First of all, the pillar of sustainability. Secondly, the pillar of regulatory and international standards, because international standards at the end are science-based. And by implementing them, you mainstream science. And secondly, education and best practices. That's the reason why IFAF is also active in train-the-trainer programs, like in Tanzania, like in Nigeria, and now under development in Asia. And we have a whole program and action list. I'm not going to elucidate this. I spoke with you about the Global Feed LCA Institute. We just had a meeting here about the FAO-led LEAP project, which is of big importance and helped us to standardize. There are projects running about convergence, about how do you bring basically the requirements on the table to have additives registered in a regulatory system throughout the globe. And what I said, and for example, a new manual is coming up, the biosecurity manual, which will be published soon, and then will go out basically to serve the world and share knowledge. So, what are we delivering? 250,000 employees, 250,000 technicians and scientists, and they are offering the knowledge of feed ingredient selection. How are we going to do that? The knowledge of new innovative feed ingredients, the knowledge how to use them in least cost and least impact formulation, the knowledge about data sharing and having that available and helping farmers and industries to move forward, and the knowledge about good practices for the feed industry. Take all these 3 perspectives into account. So I'd like to thank you for listening. Let's face the challenge. Let's find solutions. Let's do it, and let's do it today. Thank you very much.
Ruud, thank you very much. Is there a question for Ruud, to pose to Ruud? Let's start with the government. Anyone? Anyone from any representation? Anybody? Okay. Well, since I'm running behind, thank you very much, Ruud. Thank you. Let's move on. Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to sustainable use of genetic diversity for more efficient and resilient livestock production, so genetic diversity. And to talk about that with us is Chanda Nibkar, Director of the Animal Husbandry Division and Trustee of the Nibkar Agricultural Research Institute in India. More than 30 years of goat and sheep breeding, working with hundreds of young farmers. Very interesting. So tell us about that, please, Chanda.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen and my friends, it is a great honor to stand here in front of you and to be given this opportunity, and I thank FAO for the opportunity. So, the central theme of my presentation will be that in order to make progress towards sustainable use of livestock genetic diversity, it is of utmost importance to recognize and support smallholder livestock keepers and pastoralists so that they can continue to use and thereby maintain the livestock genetic diversity. And small farmers' perspectives is a continuing thread for this conference. And one of the stated aims of this conference is to find innovations and pathways for local and diversified livestock systems. So I'm showing on this first slide the world map of pastoralists. And it shows that so far about 800 pastoralist groups have been identified worldwide by the League for Pastoral Peoples and Endogenous Livestock Development. And genetic diversity is all the more important as a risk coping mechanism for small-scale livestock producers and pastoralists, as their animals are more exposed to natural elements, diseases, and pathogens, as well as to fluctuating fodder availability. So if we look at the scale and the dimensions of livestock genetic diversity, there are about 15,000 national breed populations of more than 8,800 breeds of 37 livestock species. This is according to the DADIS database. And I would just like to mention here that recently in India, the Mithun or Bos frontalis, which is reared in the northeast part of India, has been recognized as a food animal species by the Indian government. So we have this vast genetic diversity, but this is only the diversity that has been reported, and there is probably a lot more diversity which has not yet been reported. So about half of the total genetic variation is between breeds, and it is more accessible. So the primary focus so far has been on breeds. But the remaining variability is within breeds, and there is variability outside breeds also. So many times people get very obsessed with breed purity and the animals having true to type breed standards, so that sometimes we may end up losing valuable diversity that exists alongside these true to type animals. But those animals are either ignored or culled because they have a slightly different color pattern or shape of horns. So when the Indian research fraternity announced a policy of zero nondescript animals in India, I got a bit worried. But actually their intention was very good, which was that they wanted to recognize and describe all the so far unrecognized breeds. So our livestock genetic diversity is depleting, and this concern about the loss of breeds has been felt and talked about since about the 1960s. And we find that about 31% of the non-extinct breeds are at risk of extinction, and the risk status of 57% of the breeds is unknown. And in India also we find that fewer people are now keeping breeding bulls or breeding bucks of many different cattle and goat breeds. And in 40 countries from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, 15% of the share of locally adapted breeds has been replaced by exotic and crossbred animals in the last 20 years. Depletion of genetic diversity is a loss for humanity as a whole, and through this depletion we lose the genes that might help us to deal with future uncertainties. So sustainable use of this genetic diversity is the most sensible way to maintain this diversity and also to enrich it. So the majority of the world's breeds are found in the low and medium income countries, and most of the breed diversity is embedded in livestock which are reared by traditional livestock keeper communities. And we find that each breed has evolved through genetic processes such as mutation, genetic drift, and also separate adaptation. And these breeds have evolved through responding to natural selection, through the variable selection pressures of climate, the available nutrition, diseases, parasites, and they have also responded to artificial selection, which is practiced by humans according to their own selection criteria. And this evolution will continue only if animals keep being used in those specific and changing environments. So we find that different adaptive gene complexes have evolved in each of these breeds, and so each of these breeds is a great asset to humanity. And sustainable use implies gains in food security, ecosystem health, and resilience to climate change. So why is this genetic diversity depleting? And there are a whole lot of reasons. I have listed some of those on this slide, but this list is by no means exhaustive. So one of the reasons for depletion of genetic diversity is that local breeds and animals are losing their economic rationale. And in this photo of a herd of camels, which I have taken from the website of Ilse Kohler-Rolefsen, and this photo was taken by Sophie Matterson in 2017, and this herd of camels does not exist any longer. And part of the reason for that is the camels lost their economic rationale. They used to be used for cultivation and transport, and they are not used for that any longer. And when a breed or a species loses its economic rationale, what happens is that the governments get worried, and then they start putting restrictions on the movement or the sale or the slaughter of these livestock breeds or species. But that actually turns out to be counterproductive, because then it leads to the species losing their economic rationale even further, and then the livestock keepers stop maintaining this breed or species. And that is really the most tragic consequence for any breed or species.
The previous slide. Can you go back to the previous slide? There's a picture that you took. One on top. That's you.
Yes.
What's that about? Where was that?
That was in Ladakh.
In where?
In Ladakh,
Ladakh,
in
yeah.
India,
Okay.
yes. And that is a photo of a herd of, a mixed herd of sheep and cattle.
Okay.
And they are nomadic pastoralists in an arid and difficult region.
And yet they've preserved that species
Yes,
for diversity. It does not disappear because they preserve it.
they are maintaining it.
Yeah, very
Yes,
interesting.
and they are earning their livelihood from it, and they get cashmere from the goats.
And they survive because
Yes.
they are adapted to that kind of climate
To
and,
that
and
terrain,
terrain.
and production system.
Right.
Yes.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So another reason for the loss of genetic diversity is the shift from local resources, genetic resources, to crossbred and exotic genetic resources. And we find that happening most of the times in crop livestock systems, where there is pressure to intensify in response to rising demand for livestock products and also to the rising cost of living. Another reason for the decline of genetic diversity is also that there are inadequate efforts for genetic improvement of many of the breeds, leading to the breeds becoming economically unviable. And some of the other reasons are that there are disease epidemics. So the rinderpest disease epidemic is well known, and currently there is a disease epidemic of lumpy skin disease going around in some countries. And a couple more reasons for the depletion of genetic diversity. A very important one is the lack of recognition by the governments and society of the importance of genetic diversity and the importance of livestock keepers who maintain this genetic diversity. And another reason is, of course, the depletion of natural resources which are required by livestock to exist. So, what are some of the measures to safeguard and enhance this genetic diversity? So, one of the main measures is to understand the diversity and recognize it through its measurement, recording, and documentation, which includes biocultural protocols. Because, of course, the cultural and economic and recreational and other such reasons for which livestock are maintained are also very important for their continuous use. So we find that for many breeds, information on their desirable attributes is not available. So we keep getting surprised when we actually measure the weights of many goat breeds in India, and we find that actually they weigh more than what we expect them to weigh at a certain age, because they have never been measured before. So we need to measure our breeds, and we also need to find out on the at the genomic level, what attributes they have, or what are the origins of their functional and adaptive characteristics which make them survive in these difficult environments. So it's also necessary to support, to give support to establish and maintain breeding programs, and emphasizing community-based breeding programs. So community-based breeding programs have been shown to be successful in bringing larger number of animals within the purview of selection, and they have been proved to lead to measurable genetic gain. And it is also important to support the networks of breeders. Similarly, the use of advanced technologies can be done to develop better management options and better and more informed use of the genetic diversity. In some places, people have started to strengthen the market linkages for the products of local breeds and publicizing the novel products available from these local breeds. For example, some of the organizations in India have now started marketing camel milk and trying to give an economic rationale to the camels. So basically, it is very important to incentivize and support the livestock keepers, and sometimes even simple enabling policies, such as giving them support during their migration, can also prove to be effective for supporting and encouraging the livestock keepers. So finally, I would just like to say that our smallholder livestock keepers and pastoralists are the custodians of our livestock genetic diversity, and it is the responsibility of the governments, researchers, and of society to encourage, support, and incentivize the livestock keepers. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chanda. Is there perhaps one question for Chanda? Okay, if there's not, I think we move on because I'd like to stay on time. Fascinating, Chanda. Thank you. Is there one? Wait. There's a green light over here. Yes, please.
Thanks, Chandra. My name is Miguel Garcia Winder from Mexico. And I want to thank the previous speakers on this. One time in my life I was an animal scientist. So now I'm a politician, so that's a very bad combination. A conference like this gives us the opportunity to dream and recognizing the biological complexities. What is the role of genetic gene banks for the future of animal biodiversity? It's easy to keep a seed in the plant. Very difficult to keep an embryo. Most difficult to transfer an embryo later on. So how can these genetic banks have a role in the future? In Mexico, we have two. And when I compare the amount of plants vis-a-vis the amount of animals, in the best case scenario, I just have frozen semen in the animals, but I don't have a couple of embryos maybe. Can you tell us about your dreams on this?
That is a very interesting question. And I have myself thought about it quite often. And I think that it is rather a long shot to say that you might be able to recreate a breed in future because it had certain interesting attributes. And then again, if you do the recreation, you will be doing it after a number of years. And so that breed would not have been through all the different transitions. So that is one point. But at the same time, I feel that there is definitely a role for even livestock gene banks in order to get at those peculiar or the specific particular characteristics that we might need. And so, for example, you might want to use the stocks of frozen semen to introduce some characteristics into another breed, for example, that you are looking for. But yes, and it is at the same time, it is expensive to maintain livestock gene banks. And then there are related points, such as whether you are really getting the representation of the livestock diversity when you preserve various livestock specimens and so on. So yeah, there's definitely a role for them though, I think. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Gracias por la pregunta. Thank you. And thanks, Chanda. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to a panel discussion. Yes. Thank you. Filippo, please, Caroline, and Jesus. I will present you formally tout à l'heure. So please come up. And here we're talking, it's a facilitated discussion after what we heard from the different presentations. And we're also bringing other things to the table. Okay, so we have Filippo and Caroline and Jesus. Jesus is coming. All right, bienvenido, Jesus. And I think we begin with Filippo Miglior, adjunct professor, University of Guelph, and senior advisor, genetic strategic initiatives, Lactanet Canada, herd management for dairy. You worked in Italy and Canada, is that right? And you led groundbreaking research in animal breeding, so it's quite germane to what we just heard just now from Chanda, didn't we? Yeah. You can, the microphone should be, voilà. Okay, grazie.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much to FAO for the kind invitation. It's really an honor. I think we heard great talks.
Closer, yeah.
You heard great talks today.
Yeah.
And of course, the importance of animal breeding is been strategic already for our industry and our producer. You know, we could have an example like in North America where the breeding programs in the last 50 years have doubled the individual animal dairy cattle production and at the same time reducing the number of animals. So we have been able to produce exactly the same amount of milk, but with 1/3 of the cows, for example. And this has happened pretty much in every major dairy country, and the impact has been massive in the reduction already. Now the good things is that we now have new tools to actually select animals for reducing methane emission and without impacting production. These are being developed in Canada, being launched in April, in Spain, using direct methane emission, and also with some sustainability indexes in Australia, in Ireland and UK. So genetics can do a lot. We estimated that by 2050 we will be able to reduce by 30% cumulatively just with genetics only, but together with nutrition we will be able to reduce by 55% our reduction. So it's a very powerful tool that has worked across many traits.
Can you provide a good example of where an animal breeding program simultaneously improved livestock production and reduced the environmental impact?
Yeah, that's
more with less. Right?
Yeah, that's what I said earlier on. I mean, the fact that we would not know at the time. We were selecting for high production. We've been able to diminish the number of animals, and by so reducing by 2/3 the emission at the same time. And now we can do even better because we can actually. The way I tell to a producer is, you can select now for methane emission the same way you're selecting for milk because they are exactly the same genetic level of heritability.
And question two, looking particularly to the challenges of climate change, how can resilience be integrated into animal breeding programs?
That's an excellent question. In a sense, we're already doing that because we are not just selecting for production, we're selecting for a much larger selection objective, which include better health, better fertility. So we are already selecting for resilience, but we can also do better. I think the key will be if we're selecting for traits that mitigate our climate change, are these animals going to be the same also that are going to be good for adaptation, for heat tolerance, for example? That to me is a big research question we still haven't solved. Okay,
let me move to Caroline Aymon, Director General, International Dairy Federation. The IDF has over 1,200 dairy experts in 39 countries, quite impressive. You represent about 3/4 of global milk production, according to your group. I have a question for you. How does the work of the IDF, being global, lead to better production in small dairy production?
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity for having me today. And I would like, on behalf of the Sustainable Livestock Coalition, take this opportunity to commend the vision and the leadership of the DG, as well as the Director of Animal Health and Production Division, Tanawa Tiensen, as well as the Chair of the Subcommittee on Livestock, Ambassador Cherniak, for bringing us together today to celebrate the contribution of livestock and to also get inspired by best practices. That's why we're all here. And that's why I will actually try to do today.
Yeah, so a best practice with small farmers, in low and middle income countries,
IDF, as you just mentioned, we have members in 40 countries, so we all work together to learn and share science. One thing that we do at IDF, and we've been doing it since 1903, so it means that continuous improvement and doing good is something that we have in our DNA in the dairy sector. We actually have working with our colleagues to develop different tools. For example, we've developed with FAO and WOA at the time a guide on animal welfare to help in the best practices in following the standard and making sure it's implemented. We publish every year what we call an animal health report, where we have good practice from around the world that can inspire small-scale farmers and low and medium income countries as well, on what practices can help them to improve in terms of animal health.
For example, can you give a concrete example of that?
India is a good one. We just heard Hendra, and actually we have a colleague from India that are here that can actually talk better about it than me. But India is a great example of the work they've been doing in trying to improve animal health and welfare, both through education, as well as having more veterinarian, as well as actually using platform. They developed an app that actually won last year the IDF Dairy Innovation Awards to help farmers to better detect and to know how to address in certain situations, because you don't have vet in all the small villages. So
okay, so you've done great so far, since the beginning of the 20th century even, but what about now? How do you accelerate, like we talked about, the Director General even said, we got to accelerate this transformation to stay on time for our targets. How is the IDF helping on that?
Oh, thank you for asking. Actually, just for you this week, we've published a special edition of our Dairy Sustainability Outlook, where we actually share good practices linked to the four betters that we're discussing this week. So you can go on our website, download it for free, and you have also 6 other editions of the Dairy Sustainability Outlook, when you have best practices from around the world on how we're doing great in the dairy sector, and how you can be inspired and scale up those opportunities. But one thing I want to mention, because I want to call for action, we have government in the room. First thing, please use the great contribution of livestock to the SDGs in your report. It is important that you actually talk about the goodness of the school meal program and how this is improving and livelihood in your country. So we need you to do that. Second, and we've heard that this morning, investment, science and innovation, research and development. There's underfinancing in livestock. That needs to stop. That's a way of accelerating. We need to have money for research and development, but also for implementation. You heard it from the farmer earlier this morning. You also need to have money to help training and also implementation of all those great solutions. Third one I have is valorize ecosystem services. We know that actually livestock is bringing good. Soil health wouldn't have been possible without livestock. Manure, actually we talked about manure earlier today. Bioenergy that is coming from the derivation of dairy is also one of the examples. Other one I want for the government, prioritization of livestock. When you include livestock and dairy into your strategy, in your regulatory framework, then you actually encourage and facilitate and accelerate best practices. Other one I have is collaboration. We talk about collaboration, we've talked about inclusivity, we've talked about commitment. The global dairy sector has been committed to the Dairy Declaration of Rotterdam and to the pathways to dairy net zero and climate action, to do good, to do better, and to do more altogether. Okay. And I will stop there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Jesus David Ocampo Gonzalez, Secretary of Rural Youth National Association of Goat Farmers. You are from Panama, also president of the National Rural Youth Program in Western Panama. But there are obstacles to trying to make the transition, right? I mean, let's get a bit of a reality check from you about what the major constraints are for better production that you and your fellow farmers have faced in Panama. Are these constraints more technical or institutional, or Right, as we just heard from Caroline, maybe it's a money thing. What is it?
Ok, hola.
Hola.
Bueno, son ambos
Ambos.
problemas, correcto. ¿Por qué digo ambos? Primero, en Panamá no tenemos cultura de consumo de leche de cabra. Nosotros nos dedicamos principalmente en las cabras en Panamá es para el consumo de la leche. También hay carne, pero es en menor porcentaje. Perdón. Uno, cultura. Número dos, los especialistas como médicos veterinarios, ingenieros agrónomos, no se especializan en cabras solamente. Van a que de repente los veterinarios van perros y gatos porque es lo que más hay en el negocio, lo que genera dinero.
Entonces, ¿hay un problema con educación? O...
Con educación,
Sí.
precisamente para ingresar a la universidad son solamente 50 cupos que dan para los veterinarios. Y de esos 50 personas que entran, no me garantiza que cada año salgan 50 especialistas. Entonces es más complicado por esa parte, pues. Y a nivel de gobernanza, pues recientemente se ha venido apoyando pues al tema caprino en Panamá. Desde hace 5 años para acá es que veo más gente pidiendo leche de cabra, viendo que es más saludable para muchas personas. De repente, para las personas que sufren de intolerancia a la lactosa o alergias, recurren a la leche de cabra.
Entonces, cultura, educación.
Cultura, educación.
Papas quizás también, como dice, sí.
Así es.
Bastante de financiamiento.
Financiamiento antes no había y ahora el que hay es muy limitado. Entonces, yo como capricultor, para yo poder pagar un financiamiento, no lo puedo hacer a los 6 meses ni al año. Yo tengo que esperar a que mi animal empiece a parir. ¿Qué tal si yo compro un cabrito de 2 meses? Tengo que esperar hasta que sea apto para reproducirse y que después produzca esa leche, después comercializar la leche, ver si vendo la leche y si no vendo la leche, transformar queso, yogur, helados, jabones, o sea, hacer una derivación de productos para poder yo decir, ok, mi negocio ya me está dando para poder yo pagar ese préstamo como a los 3 o 4 años.
Sí, sí, claro, claro. Okay, I have another question, but I have it in English, so I'll just read it in English. You are the president of the National Rural Youth Program in Panama. In that role, what major results would you like to see come out of this conference? In other words, how can an event like this support you and your fellow farmers in your work?
Ok, presidente en Panamá Oeste, ¿sí? Listo. Para mis compañeros de Juventud Rural ha sido un camino bastante largo. En Panamá, como les digo, Panamá es un país joven, pero bastante pujante, bastante fuerte con sus personas. Panamá desde hace 3 años ha venido haciendo investigaciones de quiénes eran jóvenes líderes en sus comunidades de todo el país para ver quién era productor, quién no era productor, porque en Panamá se dio mucho el tema de la deserción. Los jóvenes iban desde el campo hacia la ciudad a buscar un trabajo y no encontraban trabajo en la ciudad. Tenían que regresar al campo. Entonces venían con esa decepción de la ciudad. Pero ¿qué busca en este momento Panamá o en el Programa Nacional de Juventud Rural? Buscamos que los jóvenes no salgan del campo, sino que vean en el campo una oportunidad de negocio para ellos. No voy a trabajar para nadie más, sino voy a trabajar para mí mismo. Yo mismo encargarme de complementar mi cadena de valor. ¿Cómo lo hago? Yo mismo siembro, abono, cosecho, comercializo, vendo y no tengo necesidad de intermediarios. Eso es lo que buscamos nosotros. No tener esos intermediarios que se quedan con toda la plata que nosotros podemos tener. Nosotros mismos comercializamos. También damos capacitaciones o buscamos personas que se encarguen de dar capacitación en conjunto pues, con el Ministerio de Desarrollo Agropecuario.
Estás hablando con otros jóvenes aquí también.
Sí, también.
Probablemente dicen la misma cosa o parece con otros en otra parte del mundo.
Le hablo de Latinoamérica. En Latinoamérica tenemos esa deficiencia, pues, que no en todos los países de Latinoamérica hay ese apoyo a los jóvenes. Inclusive en Panamá, años atrás, no teníamos ese apoyo a los jóvenes. Ahora es que hemos venido, pues, con estos eventos que a los jóvenes se los está escuchando, se nos está dando la importancia, porque, decimos, los jóvenes son el futuro, pero no, los jóvenes son el presente.
Exacto. Any questions, comments? Let's start with the governments. Anybody? We have a couple of minutes for a Q&A. Is there a non-governmental? Can I stretch that out to non-governmental? International institutions. Any questions, comments on what's been said by the panel and by the speakers? Anybody? Okay, don't jump all at once. I have a green light over there. Yes, please. You give your name and title, please. No? No? That was an accident. Okay. All right. Good. All right. Is there one over here? Where? Where is she? Okay. Wherever you are, turn on the microphone on. Oh, it's over here. Sorry. Okay. People are pointing over there. Yes, please.
Thank you. Hello. Good afternoon. I'm Ana Granados. I work for the European Forum of Farm Animal Breeders and a technology platform promoting research and innovation in animal genetics and reproduction. So, as far as there were no comments, I just wanted to highlight what was said by Filippo and I don't remember from Panama and Caroline. Jesus. Hola, Jesus. So just wanted to add a comment. Of course, this is a European perspective that I'm giving today, but and it was said by Filippo, but animal breeding programs are a sustainable and balanced combination of many things that were said here today during the whole day. So there's different breeding objectives are better animal health and welfare, so more robustness, more resilience, as was said by Filippo. And I wanted to agree that research and innovation, Caroline said, is really a need. We need to, it was said this morning also, livestock is underfunded. We really need to invest, and we need to invest also in scaling up these solutions. Sometimes technologies and knowledge are available, but they are not affordable for many communities around the world. So, of course, from a European perspective, it's easy to talk about it because it's widespread, genomics is widespread in many species, and other tools are, but for small ruminants, these are not even in Europe. So how governments, how FAO, how we can provide this knowledge exchange, this knowledge scaling up, and these technologies available for all. Not saying that we have to implement commercial breeds everywhere, the ones that, I mean, what Filippo was mentioning is known by everyone, that we have main commercial breeds in many places, but to change this genetic diversity that is already there in many communities. Thank you.
Would anyone on the panel would like to comment? Filippo, please.
Thank you, Anna. That's the million-dollar question. Because I'm a half glass full as well, and I believe in our ruminant species in the large countries, large dairy countries, let's say, and beef. I believe we will solve this. However, the biggest problem how we can move this technology to, country like India, where there are 220 million cows, buffalo and dairy cows, how we move this to other countries, Southeast Asia and so on. So that's, and maintaining the genetic diversity that Chanda is also mentioned, which is also so important. I don't think we have a solution yet for that. I do believe we can do something on this, let's say, more developed country, but how we can move that technology. Genomics is an excellent technology, which is now probably cheaper, more affordable, but how we can move, one thing is genomic on the Holstein breed, one thing is genomics on these 1,000 beautiful breeds that are well adapted to India's condition, for example, and we cannot mix things up as well. So I don't have an answer, but thank you, Anna. I think it's what we need to find a solution. Probably we need a paradigm here.
So you're expanding on the question, I guess, that you're...
I think I'm putting more the focus.
Yes, yes. Anyone else on the panel? Yes, Caroline.
Just 1 second to add about collaboration. I think at the end of the day, we've seen it in many countries where you do have collaboration between private sector, government, academic, and that's what actually is very helpful. India is a good example. Kenya also have a specific government representative on breeding and reproductive technology. So at the end of the day, it's by working together for most of these issues, but on breeding and as well.
Okay. One more question maybe? One more question, comment? Yes, please.
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you, panelists.
Can you give your name and title? Please,
Yes,
sir?
I'm Yaya Olaniro.
Closer to the mic, yes?
I'm Yaya Olaniro, the Nigerian permanent representative.
Right.
Small ruminants. In Africa, I do know that we have not reached that level of genomics and gene editing, all that. But fundamentally, I think there's still a lot that can be done in that ordinary selection of ruminants, for instance, that can give 2 or 3 small goats or sheep will be a first step when work is now being done on the more complex thing. So I think the first thing is a selection process for genes that are of value in terms of milk production, for health of children, and then meat. We must also remember that most of these animals are handled by women and their smallholders. So I think that's an area that can be really worked upon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Comment? Jesus, por favor.
Bueno, para compartir un poco la experiencia, pues con referente a lo que dijo el caballero, sí, en lo que obtenemos esa tecnología o a acercarnos a esa tecnología, lo que hacemos es basarnos en la producción de leche, precisamente pues para la alimentación de los niños, viendo qué cabras llevan. Yo tengo que llevar registros de todo, tengo que anotar todo. Por ejemplo, una cabra cuando pare, tiene su promedio de lactancia, pero esa cabra tiene un pico de lactancia, ¿sí? Yo tengo que revisar todos los picos de lactancia de esa cabra. Por ejemplo, si ya tiene 4 partos, su pico de lactancia de 3.5 litros y va bajando durante 6 meses, ok, ahí yo conozco el pico. Ese es primero el principio que debo tener antes de buscar pues, un genoma en este caso. ¿Por qué no me enfoco en la cantidad de crías? Por experiencia, menos es más, ¿sí? Entre más animales tenga mi cabra, me ha pasado que tiene 3, 4 cabritos, que los cabritos salen muy pequeños, entonces tengo que proporcionarle mucha más leche a esos cabritos para poder que agarren un buen tamaño y que se desarrollen mucho mejor, ¿sí? Entonces, cuando tengo una cabra que pare un cabrito o 2 cabritas, esa cabra se desarrolla mucho más rápido que si tuviese 3 o 4 cabritos. Entonces, yo me baso en la producción primero para mi negocio y me baso también en la producción e inclusive para la seguridad alimentaria.
Very good technical answer. Wow, that's very, very impressive. One more quick comment, Filippo, please.
Just one quick comment to our colleague from Nigeria. We are talking about selective breeding here. We haven't done any genetically modified animals or gene editing, so it's all about measuring, which is, of course, expensive. I think what Karen was talking about, the new app, for example, in India, that some producers are able to measure that. So it's about measuring first, and then we can select. But first, we need to measure and know animal identification as well, of course.
Our thanks to Filippo, Caroline, and Jesus. Please. Thank you. And we will bring the next panel on. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is on animal health for improved production and public health. Salama Al-Muhairi, Research and Development Department Manager for the National Emergency Crisis and Disasters Management Authority of the United Arab Emirates. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you very much.
Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with you to present the topic of animal health for improved production and public health. So, as you all know, and also mentioned earlier by the other speakers, that the world population is increasing over the time. And by the year 2050, the estimated population will reach 9 to 10 billion people. This means that more food will be required. Now, when we have more food, this means that we'll put a demand on the animal source food. So we will have intensification of livestock production, and more animal agriculture will be increased. This will have another consequence on the land use. So more land will be used for animal agriculture. As a result of that, we'll also have an impact on the vector distribution. As a result of intensification of livestock production, there will also be an impact on animal health. So more drug will be used, including the antimicrobial drugs. Now, the antimicrobial drug resistance brings more challenges to the table. 700,000 deaths each year from antimicrobial resistant today, and 90% of them occur in low and middle income countries. By 2030, the antimicrobial use increases by 67%, and this will result in livestock production decrease by 10%. The reduction of reduction in livestock production will mean that we will have more people forced into extreme poverty. By 2050, 10 million deaths each year from the antimicrobial resistant. Increasing the livestock production and the high interaction between animals and wildlife animals, as well as the interaction between animals and humans, will all result and give opportunities to emerging and re-emerging of animal diseases. 20% of global production losses can be linked to animal diseases, and this means that 1 billion cases of illness and millions of deaths occur globally every year from zoonotic diseases. In terms of monetary value, the animal diseases or zoonotic disease will cause $200 billion direct and indirect losses. This is a study done by Oxford Analytica, which they investigated the associative relationship between increased levels of livestock diseases and reduced production. They used data modeling from data collected from WAHI's and FAO database. So they found through data modeling that global poultry production is increased by 2.8 million tons due to diseases, poultry diseases. And this is enough to feed 100 million people for a year. The reduction also due to poultry diseases result in 3 million tons of global reduction in egg production. And this causes a revenue loss of over $5 billion US. And this will also, there is association of global hunger with the poultry diseases. There was increase, 13.6 million people forced to hunger due to poultry diseases. And also in 2019, the figure is more than the double. They also investigated the associative relationship between increased levels of livestock disease and reduced production. So they found through data modeling that livestock production due to disease is reduced to 80 billion kilogram and dairy is reduced to 180 billion kilograms. And this enough to feed 1.6 to 2 billion people. And this also caused an annual revenue loss of more than 300 billion. On the other hand, disease reduction impact, they investigate the disease reduction impact, and they found that 1% reduction in diseases results to increased production, meat production and dairy production from 80 to 82 million. And this also increased the annual revenue to up to 11 billion US dollar. The animal health has also an impact on human health. So more than 60% of human infectious diseases originate in animals. And most of the emerging diseases reported to WOA have an impact on public health. So how do we safeguard animal health and public health? One Health and biosecurity are very important to protect the animal health and public health and the environment as well. So biosecurity, as defined by FAO, is a strategic and integrated approach that encompasses the policy and regulatory frameworks for analyzing and managing relevant risks to human, animal, and plant life and health, and associated risks to the environment. And biosecurity is implemented at different levels, including the farm level. So farm biosecurity is all the procedures or all the processes and measures designed to protect the farm from the entry and the spread of diseases and pests and any biological agents that can affect the animal health, public health, and the environment. And these measures including access control, quarantine and isolation, surveillance, in addition to vaccination, among others. So if we look at the vaccination as an example, the data modeling study also showed that increased vaccination as a control measure or as animal protection measure will have a positive impact on meat production. So meat production will increase from 4% to 70%. And this means that more food will be available to more people. And this also have an impact on the positive impact on the revenue. So more revenue could be generated. This figure is basically showing that prevention of diseases has a high return of investment. This figure was developed on invasive species, but I see the applicability of it for animal health. So the highest return of investment actually is in the prevention stage. So what we mean by prevention, prevention of, there is a primary prevention on the upstream, and also there is a secondary prevention downstream. The primary prevention on the upstream is the preventing of pathogen from transferring from animal to other animals or to a human. So preventing the spillover of pathogens by addressing the drivers of pathogen spillover at the human, animal, and environment interface to minimize the risk. So safeguarding animal health and public health is not only sector-specific, so it needs a multi-sector collaboration, communication, and coordination, capacity building. And here comes the One Health approach. The One Health is an integrated, unifying approach that aims to sustainably balance and optimize the health of humans, animals, plants, and ecosystems. It recognizes the health of human, domestic and wild animals, plant and wider environment are closely linked and interdependent. So this approach mobilizes multiple sectors, disciplines, and communities at varying levels of society to work together and to tackle threats and risks. So to implement the One Health approach at all levels, the quadripartite organizations, the WHO, WOA, FAO, and UNEP, they developed a joint plan of action that, when it's implemented, its ultimate aim is to safeguard animal health and public health, considering the One Health approach. In this joint plan of action, they identified three pathways of change. Pathway 1, the policy, legislation, advocacy, and financing. Pathway 2 is focusing on the institutional development, implementation, and sectoral integration. Pathway 3 is focusing on the data, evidence, and knowledge. So in the joint plan of action, it identifies 6 action tracks with multiple activities in each track, and will ultimately have a medium outcomes and long-term outcomes to achieve an ultimate goal for having a world better able to prevent, predict, direct, detect, and respond to health threats and improve the health of human, animal, plant, and the environment while contributing to sustainable development. So to zoom out and have a helicopter view on the impact of animal health, we can see that the animal health have direct and indirect impact on the sustainable development goals, on a number of sustainable development goals. So this means that comes to my final summary is that the animal health is a fundamental component of livestock production and public health, and also in achieving the sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I like that line about the highest return on investment was from prevention. Fascinating. Maybe that's where the hashtag sustainable livestock. Anyone would like to ask one question before we move on? One question. Yes, sir. Bienvenue.
Merci beaucoup. Je suis bienvenu du Congo-Brazzaville. Du Congo. Oui. Je vais juste faire un commentaire parce que Madame a parlé de l'importance de la vaccination. J'aimerais bien qu'elle prenne d'abord. Madame a parlé de l'importance de la vaccination. S'il faut parler des maladies animales, vous savez qu'il y a des maladies qui sont des maladies transfrontalières. Et surtout dans les régions comme les nôtres, pour que la vaccination soit efficace, il faudrait bien que la vaccination soit globale au niveau de tous les pays. Vous vaccinez chez vous, le voisin n'a pas vacciné, et c'est comme si vous n'avez pas vraiment fait quelque chose. Et les petits producteurs, les petits éleveurs qui ont des petits cheptels, qui parfois sont victimes, je prends le cas de la PPR par exemple, qui sont victimes qui perdent leur cheptel. Parfois, ce n'est pas seulement les moyens qui leur manquent, peut-être pour accéder au vaccin, mais toute la logistique qui accompagne la mise en œuvre de la vaccination. Voilà, donc c'est le problème que nous sommes en train d'aborder ici. Une seule santé, c'est une question complexe, mais déjà pour les maladies animales, parfois la réponse elle est globale au niveau régional, au niveau sous-régional, et c'est justement là où vraiment nous sommes un peu handicapés, où on a vraiment des difficultés pour pouvoir aller de l'avant. Donc voilà un peu. Effectivement, et pour la coordination des efforts pour pouvoir faire face. Voilà un peu le commentaire que j'allais ajouter.
Yes, I think it is very important, the collaboration and the coordination among within the country as well as on the region level and the global level is very important, but it is also challenging. That's why we are promoting the One Health approach to be implemented at all levels. And we need to understand the gaps in each country, in each region, in order to fulfill the gaps. So I understand it is really challenging, and that's why there are increasing efforts to have an action plans and to make sure that implementation is in place.
Very good, Salama. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. A big round of applause to Salama. Thank you. Shukran. And let's move on to animal welfare, a key element of sustainable livestock production. Hans Spolder, senior scientist at Wageningen University in the Netherlands. You've worked on issues related to space allowance of pigs, of tail biting, aggression during mixing, pig handling, and I think you sign on to the One Welfare principle. Is that right? Please.
An honor to be asked to give a paper here on animal welfare. And I would like to start by stating the obvious. Animals are sentient beings. Animals can feel pain, fear, distress, and also the converse. They can feel comfort, satisfaction, joy. And I think that's an idea that is shared by all of us. We may differ a little bit on to what level, what species sentience goes and when it starts, but I'm sure we all agree that animals are not merely robots or automata that receive inputs from their environment and then go on to behave. Actually, the fact that we share this is probably best illustrated by the global adoption of the WOA standards on animal welfare. Because if we didn't agree that there have to be welfare standards, we also wouldn't agree that there is sentience among animals, because without sentience there is no animal welfare. Now, what does that mean in terms of animal welfare and animal needs, that they have sentience? Well, let's start with the notion that right across the world, a given breed or a given type of animal will have exactly the same basic physiological needs and behavioral needs. The circumstances under which the animals are kept will differ. The farms, the climate, they will be different between the different conditions, but their basic needs are the same. And what it means is that we have to address the circumstances in order to meet those needs. Now, there are two things relevant when you try to improve animal welfare. One is, how do you measure it? Because only by measuring what you've got, you will be able to see whether you make any progress. And the second thing is, you need to have a target or a goal, maybe a minimum value of some sort that you want to achieve or that you want to attain. I'm going to be referring to both of these two issues now. First of all, the assessment of animal welfare, I think, properly started with the Bramble report in 1965, because Professor Bramble, when he published his 5 freedoms, gave us all an indication as to what the definition of animal welfare is, and at the same time how we can then assess it. Freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, disease, freedom to behave in a species-specific way, and freedom from fear and distress. Many scientists have used these guidelines, these 5 freedoms, to then develop assessment systems for animal welfare. And in recent years, the group of Professor Meller in New Zealand have expanded and developed the 5 domains model. It's slightly different. It talks about nutrition, physical environment, health, and behavioral interaction, but it also mentions, and this is very relevant, it also mentions the mental or affective state of animals. Meller, in his thinking, moves the thinking for animal welfare on reducing suffering towards a life worth living. these domains, these areas of science can all be measured. We have various parameters. Even trying to assess the mental and the affective state, there's now a growing set of tools whereby we can ask the animal about how it feels. I won't go into that. That's a separate presentation altogether. But what I would like to do in the remainder of my presentation is to talk with you about what then are these minimal levels, or if you like, what are the target values that you want to achieve when it comes to animal welfare. And there we touch on the subject of value judgments. And value judgments to set standards are often not just affected by what welfare you want animals to have, but also by many other considerations: farmer income, animal health, climate change mitigation, food safety and food quality, and they are all relevant. They are all important. Trade-offs between these elements and with animal welfare are necessary and have to be dealt with. And they aren't always aligned, so sometimes something goes at the detriment of something else. And the most common example, of course, that everybody will refer to when talking about investing in animal welfare is that it costs money. There is an inverse relationship, or at least a perceived inverse relationship, between, on the one hand, farm economy, and on the other hand, gaining on animal welfare. I show you here the model developed by McInerney in the late 1990s, which shows the relationship between production on the one hand, so the income of the farmer you can translate it to, that's on the x-axis or the horizontal axis, and how it relates to animal welfare, which is on the y-axis, on the left-hand side, the vertical axis. And what you see is that initially, if you improve animal welfare, for example, as the previous speaker was referring to, by improving animal health, you will not just increase welfare, you will also increase farm productivity. And this will go okay up to a certain point. And McInerney points it as point number B, you can see at the top of the graph, where a maximum level of animal welfare is achieved. If you push further, you want more eggs, more milk, more meat, the chances are that the degree of welfare that the animal enjoys will go down because you put more pressure on the animal. Now, in fact, and that has happened, of course, because in our current systems, our current husbandry systems, they are optimized, not for animal welfare, they're optimized for economic performance. And that, of course, means that very often that goes at the detriment of the welfare of the animal. And that means, in turn, that if you want to change anything to these systems, if you want to improve animal welfare, yes, you will affect the income of the farmer. Always? No. Not always. I can think of, and now we can think globally, right across the whole spectrum of farms that we have, I can think of at least 3 ways where improving animal welfare still goes hand in hand with improving farmer income. The first one relates to all those farms, all those industries that have not yet reached part B, either on the whole spectrum of keeping their animals or on separate items where they can still make improvements. And I give you some very simple and basic examples. You see a chicken trying to reach water in the drinking bowl on the left-hand side. Chickens grow. If you don't move your bowl up with the length of with the growing size of the chicken, it's bad for chicken welfare because it can't reach the water anymore, and it's bad for growth of the chicken. The same applies to finishing pigs, for example. Here is a win-win situation. There's a picture there of a fence with a big hole in it. You want to keep your animals free from predators, you need to mend the holes. It's very basic, but it serves the purpose of increasing welfare and it will benefit your productivity. And the final one is about identifying diseased animals, or in this case, an animal with a tail that's bitten. If you remove the biter, or if you remove the bitten pig, you will help the animal in terms of its welfare, but you will also help your farm in terms of its productivity. This is one example. The second example is on the handling of our animals. And it's been proven extensively that positive handling of animals will actually be beneficial for their production. There are great minds like Professor Temple Grandin in the United States, or Professor Paul Hemsworth in Australia, who've developed their scientific career around proving that effect and training farmers to better handle the pigs so that the fertility of the gilts is better, the milk yield of the cows is higher, and the growth of the chickens is better. Or in the case of Professor Temple Grandin, who focused on the final stages of the life of an animal, transport, handling in lairage, and the slaughter process all affect, the way you do that, all affects the deads on arrival, carcass condemnation, the levels of broken wings, or the poor quality of beef and pork. Better handling helps the farmer as well as the animal. My final example is maybe not in reach of all of us, but welfare labeling is a growing theme in quite a few countries right across the world. Welfare labeling for better production practices will benefit the chain because it will allow consumers to make a choice, and they will be able to pay more for the type of product that they want, and it will therefore also help the farmers and ultimately, of course, help the animals. So welfare labeling, although still probably restricted to only parts of our world, is definitely has a future. Let me close my presentation by pointing out that this afternoon there will be a side event on One Health and One Welfare. And in it, the basic premise is that the well-being of the animals and the well-being of the owners is actually directly correlated. And you'll be hearing more about that after 5:15 downstairs. For me, this reinforces the very important message that animal welfare is a key element in increasing sustainability of livestock production. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. In fact, there is an animal welfare event Thursday, right? Here at the FAO. Will you be there?
Not involved, I'm afraid.
Not
so
involved.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Well, then, is there a question for Hans now to ask? And to keep in mind, there will be a conference on Thursday on animal welfare, and then the event you talked about this evening.
Later this afternoon, yeah.
You'll be there.
I will be.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, I think to state a time, we will move on. Hans, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to the next speaker, who is Matti Pastel, Research Professor, Natural Resources Institute, Finland. This is on precision livestock farming for inclusive, efficient, and resilient livestock systems. Just to note, Matti, that you and the next speaker must hold to 8 minutes instead of 10 to give us 2 minutes of Q&A if we can. So if you can try to keep it to 8, that's what I have here on the schedule. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I'll do my best.
Okay.
So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will be talking about precision livestock farming. So I will start with the precision livestock farming of today. So what do we think of precision livestock farming? Very broadly, you think the definition of saying that you apply technological methods to monitor and control animals and also the environment. What you mean by precision in precision livestock farming would be that the term originated in early 2000s when you already had a lot of technology, but you were managing the whole herd with the technology. In precision livestock farming, they would be then to go to the animal level in dairy farms and maybe to the pen and building level in poultry systems. We see very high adoption rates of certain precision livestock farming systems. So in intensive dairy systems, for instance, we did a study with the Finnish dairy farmers a few years ago, and over 70% of the Finnish farms would be using wearable sensors for dairy cow activity monitoring. We see similarly quite high adoption rates in, for instance, in the US and in the Netherlands. We see much lower in countries like Brazil and New Zealand, maybe more extensive systems. But we also see that there's a lot of interest in companies in investing and startups in the area. So when we were looking at how many commercial sensors there are for monitoring animal welfare related traits a couple of years ago, we had 130 sensors for dairy cows and 83 sensors for pigs. So this is a large number of systems for the farmers to select from. A lot of those would be from very established companies, quite let's say, functioning and validating system. I'm sure a lot of those sensors would not exist today because of there are startups coming and they are targeting and marketing to the farmers, and then it is unclear whether the system brings value for them or not. If we think about then what's the current impact of the existing systems on sustainability, so precision livestock farming as we have it on farms today. So clearly we know there is an opportunity for sustainability gains. If we listen to the marketing of digital agriculture, we would think it is very large. If we look at the reality, we don't see very big evidence that you would get large environmental benefits actually from precision livestock farming. So clearly we have an opportunity for reduced nutrient emissions, for instance, due to improved feeding. We have a lot of systems that are providing information of animal health, which then can be used to improve it, but this requires some action. What we clearly see is if we think in terms of better production, we see improved work efficiency. Especially the introduction of milking robots has been quite transformative in some countries, that you no longer have to do the milking work manually, and this is maybe one of the systems that works well in the intensive housing systems of Finland, and I saw a very nice system in India, Uruguay earlier this year, in a way you get the same benefits in a pastoral system, which is not maybe very common for the precision technologies. The benefits of environment are quite difficult to quantify. I think this is actually due to the fact that we have very few technologies that would directly bring benefits. So buying a sensor system does not usually make anybody a better farmer. You have to be able to use the data. So in that sense, you cannot say that investing in these systems might bring an improvement if you use the data effectively. So we can say you get better information, and then you have to do something with that information. And actually, in most of the cases, I think the management of the farm would be needed to be improved, and sometimes you don't have the economic possibility, you don't have the information. So I think we need to couple these systems with much better training, because we know they are very effective farmers, but we lack the knowledge in the training programs, even in the universities, and the advisory sector lacks the information on how to make most out of the data. So I think currently we've seen kind of accidental gains in environmental efficiency, because that hasn't been the target. So we have seen that the farms, as you improve productivity, you might get environmental gains, but not necessarily. And then also, have we gotten more resilient animals from precision livestock farming? I think not. But there is hope. If we look at next on a little bit what are the opportunities of future systems, there is a target to use precision livestock farming both for efficiency and resilience. If we look at the animal efficiency, if we want to select for more efficient animals and we want to collect better phenotypes using the on-farm sensors, even the most high-tech farms today lack the ability to measure the feed intake of the animals. In most cases, you just have the production, you don't have the inputs, and then you don't know how efficient the animals are. If you look at the upper picture, this is a CFIT, a commercial system from Viking Genetics developed for measuring the feed intake of the dairy cows. This is like a very high-tech system in the sense that you have a number of 3D cameras installed above the feeding fence, monitoring both of the feed and identifying the cows, and being able to deliver efficiency traits on farm. These are currently quite expensive systems, but it's an opportunity to create reference populations. It's not a system to be used by all farms. Another option is that there has been a lot of ongoing work on quantifying animal resilience from time series data. So the use of precision livestock farming systems, the advantage is that with a sensor system you can get data about the animal productivity and behavior every day, and then you can see how they are responding to challenges. Obviously, you cannot get this type of data, for instance, with bi-monthly milk recording or, let's say, biannual animal welfare observations. So that's the opportunity. If we look into animal welfare, we have been working on a European project to see if we can automatically measure a lot of the things that Hans was talking about. We've been looking at the ways of using combination of activity sensors, milking robot data, other milk yield data, and then environmental data to see, and then scoring animals for good health, good feeding, and good housing, and developing a machine learning model to predict. And it seems if we put investment in this kind of systems, we have the opportunity to get a lot of welfare traits, but we need much bigger data sets. Which brings me to the opportunities of use of artificial intelligence. So actually, a lot of times people from other fields say, when do you have artificial intelligence in farming? Well, we have had it for a long time, of course. All of the PLF products would have some type of artificial intelligence algorithm, at least in a very broad sense, and use a lot of machine learning. But are we seeing like the benefits that other fields have seen, like machine translation and computer vision, with the very large data set? And I think we are seeing it. There is if the video is starting, this is an example of tracking of pigs with computer vision across a wide range of a situation. Was published very recently by the Catholic University of Leuven. And this is something that we can gain from the advances. We would have the same opportunities to improve the welfare and resilience of animal and new traits with the sensor systems, but actually we would need to have very large amounts of data. And this means in the order of millions of data points and animals if we wanted to compare to what is done in other fields. So this is a real challenge. A small project targeting 10 or 20 farms, let alone a lot of the research projects that are only using data from one farm, cannot kind of utilize the opportunity. The other thing, if we think about investments, I've been working on precision livestock farming, which is defined of application of sensors to animals for a long time. But I think we have to, if we want to invest and subsidize farmers, we have to look at the other side, the precision farming, the technology on the field. We see large opportunities, and I think when we are thinking of as a farmer where to invest, and if you want to invest or subsidize sustainability, you have to look at the evidence. What's the evidence of the animal side? What's the evidence on the feed production side? And target your investment smartly. And I think in order to stay in the 8 minutes that I will need to go to the conclusion. So the opportunities there, I think, is to use the sensor systems for things like welfare labeling and emission inventories that will require data sharing. So we need public-private partnerships and multi-country efforts, I think, to make it happen, that we have really large reference data, talking in the order of millions of data points, not the toy data sets of 10 farms, which allows us to prove the concept but not go into a real working systems. Then we also need standardization, and we need to motivate the companies making the systems and also the farmers to work on this. There has to be some incentive. We cannot just do it for policy monitoring reasons because somebody else is carrying the cost. I would like to reiterate the point of artificial intelligence being, I think, a real opportunity, but we need really good data collection. We need to have public and private sector involved in collaboration in getting that. We need to collaborate across continents as well. And then I think in the precision livestock farming has been focusing on the gains on the individual animals and ignoring the system level factors. So I think in combination with looking at both the crop production, the technology there, combining multiple things on the animal side, and then we can maybe get bigger gains actually on the system level than we can get by focusing on the individual animals. So thank you.
Thank you, Matti. Thank you. So sorry to speed you up.
Yeah, it's okay.
Actually, I think I do have to move on. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
okay, thanks.
Really appreciate it. Let's, to stay on time, let's move to Wu Qichin, who is, and to keep in mind also, so sorry, 8 minutes, if you can. I know you have a lot of material, and you are Deputy General Manager, Beijing Huadu Youku Poultry Industry, I hope I said that right, and Director of Woda Poultry in China. PhD, Animal Genetics. You were named the Outstanding Young Scientist of Beijing from the Ministry of Agriculture, so one of the best and brightest, if I may.
Thank you.
Please, and you're speaking, on smart layer, the use of ICTs, so high tech and computers, for the development of the egg industry in China. Tell us about that.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to have the opportunity standing here and sharing with you the progress of the ICTs for the Chinese egg industry. The industry has developed rapidly and has achieved greatly, with sustainable growth, relative stable layout, and coexistence of domestic and imported breeds. As we have the largest population around the world, there are still great potential in consumption and improvements in efficiency. Water, the company I worked with, is growing from a commercial farm as agri producers from the beginning, but now it is the largest breeding company in China and one of the top 3 global layer breeding companies. Its history is a microcosm of the Chinese egg industry. In 2016, we released the Smart Layer at the 25th World Poultry Congress, which made the beginning of the digitalization of egg industry. Smart Layer, oops, this doesn't work? I don't know, it's not moving, okay. Back. Here, okay, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. The Smart Layer is an industry internet platform which, with chicks as a portal, it connected the farming, breeding farming, and service, both online and offline, which combines all the resources among the industry chain. It has made remarkable achievements in breeding, farming, and service, which will lead to the transformation from efficiency, inclusive, and resilient. First, let's see the fusion of BT and IT has reshaped the poultry breeding. An auto-identification system was established with all the measure equipment integrated by image recognition, as you can see. Phenotypes of key traits are collected and transmitted automatically. The collecting efficiency improved more than 50% with almost 100% accuracy. With this system, massive breeding data are collected. 20 generations, you can see, and more than 1,300 traits, the whole life cycle to 100 weeks. About more than 120 million raw data collected annually. And the latest technologies are applied. From phenotype to genomic selection, we identified series of causative mutations and developed a SNP chip cooperated with China Agricultural University. The use of genomic selection resulted in significant improvements, especially on egg number and quality. We get an average improvements of about 51% in selection accuracy. Based on this, we designed an intelligent breeding system. Intelligent breeding system to further improve the breeding efficiency via the interaction between human selection and AI. The combining of BT and IT has contributed tremendously. We already bred 5 gene series layers to meet the diversified needs of domestic egg market. And we promoted more than 6.5 billion commercial layers in the past 14 years, which accounts for more than half of the domestic market. Besides, 3 water broilers has been successfully developed over a new stage of safe, delicious, and efficient. We also launched a new food brand, Smart Broiler, dedicated to teach the consumers and to boost the consumption of chicken meat. Here, I'm very proud to share with you that this year, on June 16, 2 of our breeders were exported to Tanzania. This is the historic breakthrough for China's domestic layer and broiler breeding. And it will definitely provide new choices and benefits the global poultry industry. Then let's see how the Internet to Things technology promotes the egg production. Nowadays, the industry evolved towards modernization so fast with all the intensive farming facilities automated. You can see, as you can see in this slide. And the environmental parameters in the house are digitalized through various sensors, and the mathematical models are used to calculate how to control. All aspects of performance are collected thanks to the new techs. You can see all kinds of robots running in the farm. The most convenient thing is that you can view the results and performance of your flocks at any time as you like. We are working on build up a digitalized farming factory using the latest techs such as gateway and models. It's able to collect all the information you need and display real-time profiles through AI model trained based on massive data. All this helps driving the farming transit from experience-based to data-driven. Smart layout is opening a new era of digital economy with even more functions. Here are some examples. 4 real-time indices are released based on 10 years big market data. Farmers can browse daily index and historical trends of egg prices, costs, and profits nationwide and in specific regions of interest. While the layer check replacement index is a predictive one, which will help the farmers to catch the best time to order a new batch. Farming plan is a tool for better management. Oops. Okay. And with this, a schedule up to 100 weeks is generated automatically, which will help to send VIP services, and the daily key points are sent to the farmer's cell phone daily. This slide shows, in addition, offline services are carried out by the what we call the string-in supermarkets. These supermarkets located near the farms will solve the last mile delivery and provide technical services face-to-face. Precisely. There are over 2,000 supermarkets serving more than 600 million layers in China today. We also designed 10 digital application scenarios to provide the farmers with intimate services from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day. So you can see that it's a typical day of farmers using smart layer. After 7 years running, Smart Layer had now near 200,000 users, covers more than 17% of the egg producers in China, and it has accumulated a huge database for the industry. So through the application of Smart Layer, the whole production from breeding to table can be managed intelligent and also traceable, achieving the goal of productive, efficiency, and profitable, realizing better production, providing the consumers with high-quality eggs and meat at a much more affordable price. Reach a reasonable balance between supply and demand. The Smart Layer is leading the healthy and sustainable development of Chinese poultry industry. It will be a symbol of high-quality development in the near future, and surely it will provide a valuable reference for the rest of the world. And that's all for my sharing today. Sorry that it seems there's a little bit problem with this slide.
Nothing to be sorry about. Those are great visuals.
Thank you, that's all. I'm very happy to share with you.
Thank you so much. Is there maybe one quick question to Wu and Chin? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Let's move on to the panel discussion. And let me call up Margarita, Shadrach, Shi, and Ambassador Miguel Marcia Vinder, please. If you can come up and take your seats, no particular order, you can grab whichever seat you'd like. Please. Hi, nice to see you. Hi. So let me go first then to, let's see here. Let me go to Margarita. And Margarita, my question to you is, has One Health changed the way, I'm sorry, Margarita, I have to introduce you, I'm so sorry. Here we go. Margarita Gomarasca, you are coordinator of the Vétérinaires Sans Frontières, VSF, International. You've worked in Spain, Italy, El Salvador, Cuba. You've worked on small-scale livestock farming, One Health, among other things. And that is why I am asking you about One Health. Has One Health changed the way VSF operates at country level? And if yes, how?
Thanks for the question. Well, actually, VSF International is a network composed by 13 member organizations, which are the VSF, the national VSF. And we all share the same vision and mission, which is inspired, framed around One Health. So actually, One Health didn't really change us because it is with us since our creation over 30 years ago. And we always have tried to address animal health risks in an integrated vision, so integrating the human health and environmental health aspects.
Right.
We have a broad understanding of One Health because we consider, for example, all the socio-economic dimension of human well-being and all the interrelations with a healthy environment, ecosystems, and human health. And we consider, for example, we go beyond zoonotic diseases, which are often flagged under the One Health approach, but we consider also the impact that non-zoonotic diseases can have on food security and nutrition of the livestock-depending communities. We consider, for example, also the quality of pastures and water as a fundamental aspect for animal nutrition, welfare, and health. And in terms of One Health implementation, for us, the key is partnership. And this is maybe the only part that really is changing a bit us. So One Health is pushing us more and more to partner with others, with expertise that are complementary to our animal health expertise. And partnering with the local stakeholders, with the technical services in the countries where we work, in order to tackle complex challenges from different angles in a very systemic manner.
So can you give us one concrete example?
Yes, so one example, for example, is the One Health for Humans, Environment and Livelihood project that is implemented in the Horn of Africa, so Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia. And this is really a good example because the other thing that I wanted to mention is the importance for us to include local communities in the One Health implementation. So through this project, we really put in place multi-stakeholder platforms with so different expertise, but also with pastoralist communities, who are the final beneficiaries of the project, so that altogether we develop adapted solution to respond to pastoralist needs in terms of One Health, so the different spheres of health.
Right, so I think you've started to answer my second question, which is how is Vétérinaires Sans Frontières, VSF, supporting animal production and health services at a country level, and what are the challenges that you face? So that, I mean, you're making that effort to go local, aren't you? But what are the challenges in doing that?
Well, just to briefly introduce, we are working in many aspects of livestock production. So we are supporting small-scale livestock keepers and pastoralists through a broad range of activities. But one really important feature and challenge in our way of operating is the context. So we work in remote areas with very limited infrastructure, limited access to services, animal health services. And we also work with pastoralist communities often that requires really approaches that are adapted to their mobility, actually.
Yeah, you work in Somalia, for instance, you said,
We are working also in Somalia, yes.
How do you deal with that? And how we have heard that Somalia is so, the livestock is so important in Somalia, right?
In Somalia, but in many other countries in Africa, Horn of Africa, West Africa, and so on. Actually, when local veterinary services are available, we try to support them through capacity building, infrastructure, equipment. But in parallel, a big part of our activities focuses on training community-based animal health workers.
So you train the trainers, or I mean, you actually go in there?
We train community members, so they are themselves livestock keepers, so that they are like better positioned to serve their own communities.
Sure.
Often it's pastorally, so moving around, they cannot, veterinary services cannot reach all the remote areas where livestock keepers are. So these community animal health services are trained in basic animal health care, husbandry practices, and disease surveillance and reporting. But an important aspect is that they are always supervised by a vet or paraprofessional veterinarian, and this really is important for us because it assures the quality of the services. To give you some example, we had done a survey in 2017. We realized that in Burkina Faso, for example, there were about 100 vets and 4,000 community animal health workers in all the country. In Laos, for example, we counted 25 vets only and 7,000 community animal health workers. So this shows that community animal health workers don't replace veterinarians, but are often the only available solution to provide, facilitate access to animal health services in remote areas.
So that's what you work on to develop that, right? Okay, let me move to, thank you. Let's move to Shadrach Mufuli, Research Fellow, Department of Agriculture and Animal Health at the University of South Africa, 15 years as President and CEO of the Agricultural Research Council, and a lot of other accomplishments on vaccines and so forth. Let me go to the questions for you, Shadrach. And the first one is, you were the former CEO of the Agricultural Research Council in South Africa. What actions do you consider the most critical to ensure that research results are applied by livestock producers and pastoralists? You can do all kinds of research, but how do you ensure that it's applied on the ground?
Wow, thank you very much. I think it's important for me to preface my response to bring the context to the operations under which the research institutions in South Africa, including the Agricultural Research Council, operate. It's an economy, particularly within the context of agriculture, that is effectively could be the microcosm of the world. On the one hand, you have highly skilled, fairly technical, large commercial farms that are able to use the best of the technologies that exist out there and are able to access the kind of skills that are required for them to reach any markets that they wish to reach and to meet any production standards that are required by the markets or even by different types of consumers. On the extreme hand, you have the resource-poor rural farmers that tend to utilize, and they're smallholder farmers that have mostly indigenous breeds of livestock, but also because they're resource poor, are unable to access certain other insights in their production systems. So one of the key things that we learned about operating in that kind of an environment in terms of the actions towards adoption is, first of all, profiling the different categories of farmers in order for you to be able to understand their needs, and so that you can be able to put together the right kind of communication and interaction packages for you to be able to deliver the right message at the right time. And that's key. With respect to your resource-poor, small-scale farmers, a part of what we then needed to be able to do is we learned that we needed to put together a suite of education and training programs, effectively bringing awareness, but also to enable them on how to handle their animals in terms of breeding, in terms of animal health plan, but also in terms of farm management practices, including biosecurity arrangements.
So you're adapting it to a little bit like what we heard from VSF, from Margarita, right? Similar.
Similar. But the idea here is that once you're able to bring all of this kind of training particularly among the resource poor farmers, you can then begin to bring an appreciation of learning around breeding programs, so that they can improve their livestock in terms of numbers, but also so that they can appreciate the scientific insights that you're bringing.
They will appreciate it when they see results, right?
Correct. And that then begins to help them in managing diseases in the first place. And secondly, it helps them in managing the productivity in terms of their breeding, which then brings, in terms of returns, if they're selling their animals, better income in the markets. But what is key is that we also try to bring them into what we could call breeding programs to learn how to keep records in terms of the progeny of their animals, selection of their animals and their breedings, and what kind of genetic traits they need to be looking forward to depending on their goals.
So that's like digitalization. That's part of digitalization, right? So how is that impacting livestock production?
Now, in terms of digitalization, that again spreads across the spectrum. There's the minimum end of it that some of the very smallholder farmers are using, that we try to introduce them. But there's the other end there where some of the recording or the performance of breeding of their animals begins to help them understand the use of some of the data in their decision making. Then you have the large-scale producers in the context of digitization, for example, that are milk producers that gather data around the genetics of their animals, but also generate or gather data around understanding the milk production and the quality of the milk, but also the breeding indices, and using that as part and parcel of the database in their breeding program for their commercial enterprises to be able to ensure that they can deliver the necessary quality and improvements in their productivity and profitability in their enterprises. But then also part of what we also learned was that it's an ecosystem as an institution in order for us to ensure the adoption of these research and innovation technologies. It's around how to invest also in the institution itself, so that it has the right technologies to use in generating the kind of scientific know-how to respond to the needs of the livestock producers, but also to the processors, and to provide the necessary scientific insights in integrating scientific principles in breeding and production systems, and then enabling all of that as part and parcel of decision making. On the other hand, it's also about enabling the policymakers to introduce digitalization in managing the identification and the traceability of livestock, which helps in disease management on the one hand. On the other hand, it also helps in enabling certain aspects of biosecurity and production, and bringing the right regulatory systems for...
So it has revolutionized. It's revolutionized livestock.
It revolutionizes, but what is important is that whatever you're doing as a research and innovation institution is that you need to adapt your technologies, you need to adapt your communication systems to the right set of farmers in the right environment in order for them to understand what you're trying to achieve, but also to encourage them to accept all of this. But it is not a one-way street. It is a partnership. In some instances, some of those very same participants in the program will pay for the system, including the research. For the resource poor farmers, you might as well easily go to government and get government to pay for that, for that particular program, in order for them to be able to participate at a minimal cost. So there's a range of ways in which you can look into this and try to make sure that actually you can achieve this. Last but not least, which is probably very important, is to ensure that the very same research institutions have the appropriate program planning and evaluation systems, and that they have the appropriate organizational capacity to deliver for the farmers.
That's a big challenge too. Shada, thank you very much. Let me move on to Shi Chunling, Executive Vice President and Secretary General, China Association of the Promotion of International Agriculture Cooperation. My question to you, or my first question to you, is what actions are most required to ensure animal welfare in Asia and China in particular, to ensure animal welfare?
谢谢，大家好。在中国呢，开展动物福利工作呢，首先我们想，中国呢土地资源比较缺乏，那么畜牧业的生产力发展水平呢也是不均衡的，所以我们如果照搬目前世界上通行的欧洲的这个动物福利模式呢，这个是不现实的，因为我们的资源禀赋决定了我们不能用这样的方式。那么今天上午呢，我们看到一个专家也讲了，2050年呢，全球的人口呢将达到90亿。那么我们用现有的单一的动物福利的模式呢，我们将会让我们的粮食安全呢不能得到保障。因此呢，我们在动物福利工作方面呢，我们提出了按照每一个国家的资源禀赋和生产力发展水平呢来搞他们的这个动物福利工作。在中国呢，我搞动物福利工作呢已经13年了。那么我们做了什么有效的方法来开展动物福利工作呢？我非常高兴能够借用 FAO 这个平台呢，能够跟大家分享我们的工作。我们第一个呢，是我们联合全球的知名的这个动物福利机构。包括国际组织 FAO 给我们很多帮助，我们制定了中国的标准。没有规矩，不成方圆。中国有句话，因此没有标准，我们就没有办法开展工作。我们的标准呢，10年间我们做了24个动物福利标准，其中有猪、牛、羊、肉鸡、蛋鸡。现在我们正在开发水产的动物福利标准。那么有了这些标准以后呢，第二个工作呢，我们认为呢就是培训和教育，这个至关重要。我们在培训方面呢，我们首先对专家进行了这个培训，我们有强大的国际专家团队在给我们中国的专家做培训。另外一个呢，我们培训了很多的企业，技术厂长，包括技术工人。非常荣幸的是，我这次来参加 FAO 的这个畜牧业转型大会呢，我带来了23个专家和这个企业家，他们是在一线积极地传播动物福利的思想和理念。同时，里面我们既有技术专家、实践专家，我们还有投资人，专业的在做动物福利方面的投资。那么最后一个呢，我认为呢，就是我们未来什么最重要？就是我们对公众的宣传最重要。那么我想最终解决动物福利问题的肯定是法律。那么我们需要循序渐进，一步一步地走。最后呢，我想有一个强调，也是一个呼吁，因为我们看到了很多国际品牌在全球都做出了承诺，他们要消费动物福利产品，包括在中国市场也有承诺。我就希望你们身体力行，把这个工作坚持下去。谢谢。
谢谢。I have another question for you, and because there's an event this evening where I suppose you will be on One Health and One Welfare. Can you tell us about how the two approaches are related?
我想是这样，就是没有同一福利，就不会有同一健康；没有同一健康，我们就没有未来。因此呢，今天晚上，我想呢，一会儿呢，这个会议结束了以后，我也邀请大家到0层的我们那个编会去，我们一同来分享我们的实践，我们怎么去从一个集约化的一个大国，怎么去开展动物福利工作。我想跟你们一起来分享我们的成果。同时呢，我们周4，就在 FAO 呢有一个我们全球的最大规模的世界农场动物福利大会。我们在那个里面呢，周4呢我们会跟大家分享我们怎么动用全球的专家，动用全球的基金， 来支持我们开展动物福利工作。我也欢迎大家一起来，谢谢。
谢谢。Let me move on to Miguel Marcia Winder, Ambassador and the Permanent Representative of Mexico to the FAO. And dos preguntas. What are the major constraints for better production that your livestock farmers are facing in Mexico? And what role can the Mexican government play in overcoming these constraints?
Buenas tardes. Thank you to everyone. I want to express my thanks to Ambassador Tanawat, now head of the livestock production in FAO, and Ambassador Cherniak for inviting me to cause disruption in the table. So thank you so much. Also, I want to take 2 minutes to express my thanks to our interpreters. I know they are suffering with my Spanish.
Absolutely.
They are suffering my Spanish.
Can we give the interpreters a big hand here? Good job. Excellent job.
Yeah, with this, when you ask me what are the problems that Mexico has on the livestock issue, and I think the problems that Mexico has in the livestock issue field are not very different from the rest of the world. I think we are facing the same type of problems. We are facing economic problems. We are facing societal conceptions of the livestock. We are facing trade issues. We are facing productivity issues. But before I go into the arguments of this, I just want to say 2 things about Mexico. When you think about Mexico, you probably think about we are the #1 exporters of beer, avocado, and tequila, which we are. But we are between the 6th and the 7th country producer of animal protein. And that is, Mexico produces about 80 to 82% of every animal protein that we consume in the country. There is one particular issue, that is dairy. We are the #1 exporter of dried milk powder, but still we are among the top 10 producers of animal proteins. So, in saying this, we have all sorts of production systems, all sorts of production scales. Some of our producers can compete with any producer in the world in terms of effectiveness, in terms of productivity, but we also have small producers that have been left behind on the development. And that is probably the main challenge that we have in Mexico, is how do we bring these small producers, how do we provide these small producers an opportunity for have a better life?
Indeed.
And I think that's the main challenge. A country like ours cannot have these producers at the lower end. And this has prompted one of the major responses of the current government, is redirecting the subsidies and redirecting, I'm sorry to say subsidies, the support, so I don't get crucified by other countries, the support toward the smallholder producers. So
can you be specific about how the Mexican government is supporting the smaller producers?
Yes, that was part of the second question.
Okay, yeah, that's
okay.
Yeah.
I can start by the second question. The way that we are doing this, Mexico, as many countries in the world, basically working in 2 major issues. One is directing the support programs. Traditionally, the support programs were oriented to the higher, let's say the higher tier of the production scale. Today, the support is given to the small producers. How this support is given is basically given to the provision of inputs, particularly fertilizers. And secondly, by paying specific support prices for crops. Okay. In the case of livestock, Mexico has a program of special prices, guaranteed prices for milk for smallholder producers. That has increased the production. But also, in Mexico, with all the problems that we have had with budget and COVID, we have changed our focus, and the government is putting more efforts in provide public goods. Because we believe that's the role of the government, to provide public goods. What are these public goods? Well, basically, we have 3 public goods for the livestock sector. One has to do with science. Mexico continues to support science, innovation through the innovation systems, through the universities. The second thing has to do with trade. We continue to have trade policies, a very open discussion. Mexico is probably one of the most open countries in the world, and we agree with Uruguay when this morning said trade needs to be a playing field for everyone, and that's something that we have to do. And third, very important for Mexico is health. And I think we have to recognize that Mexico, United States, and Canada are basically integrated, and we have to recognize that we probably have one of the best health services in the world. And so Mexico continues to provide health support, and that includes prevention of acute emergencies such as avian influenza, prevention of the potential arrival of African swine fever, to antibiotic, antimicrobial resistance, and so on and so forth. So those are some of the efforts that we have. There is an issue that we have not touched today, but I want to bring it into this conversation because I think it's going to affect Mexico, but it also affects other people, if you allow me for 2 minutes. And that's the issue of capacity and labor. We are seeing a dwindling interest of the young generations to become involved in agricultural careers, veterinarians, animal scientists, and agronomists. And in the case of veterinarians, we are seeing a switch in the interest from agricultural veterinarian to what I call companion veterinarian.
To what kind of?
Companion.
Companion.
Urban veterinarian.
Pets.
Pets, cats, dogs, and birds. And I think that's an issue that we need to address as a community.
We're going to have to talk to Monique about that. And one more minute with you, and then I got to go to
Second issue
Monique.
that we need to address as a community is the issue of labor. Today, we have less labor for the conduction of agricultural work, and the labor is not well paid, not well recognized, and I think that's an issue for the future, and we have not discussed that in this meeting.
Well, we just did. That's great that you brought that up. Thank you so much, Ambassador. That's very, very important, I think, in many countries, right? And that is so apropos now to go to Monique, who is a veterinary doctor, who is the chairman, and she's going to go up there and up to the podium and give a sum up of what you've heard during this whole afternoon. Not very easy, but she's going to do that in 2 or 3 minutes, possible? Or 4?
I don't know. I'm the last one.
Exactly.
So, and thank you, Chris. And I would like also to invite you to use your headset because my closing remark will be in French. It change a little, not only in English. Et ce sera pour moi l'opportunité de remercier chaleureusement tous les intervenants de cet après-midi. Vos présentations ont été extrêmement riches, variées, et ça a permis d'avoir vraiment un panorama très large de ce sujet sur Better Production. Alors, ça va être difficile pour moi pardon, de faire vraiment un récapitulatif. Je vais retirer quelques éléments et puis vous faire part de 3 ou 4 conclusions personnelles après vous avoir entendus tous cet après-midi. Alors, on a eu une première partie qui, je crois, a bien mis en évidence les 3 mots importants de cet après-midi: durabilité, approche intégrée et la nécessité de saisir les opportunités pour mieux exploiter l'immense diversité des systèmes d'élevage à travers le monde. Alors, on a eu une présentation indiquant que la capacité des animaux à transformer des produits bruts qui ne sont pas immédiatement nutritionnels pour l'homme et les traduire en aliments à haute valeur nutritionnelle, c'est important qu'à ce moment-là, l'alimentation animale, la recherche, l'innovation sont des éléments qu'on doit vraiment soutenir. Le mot innovation a été plusieurs fois prononcé. Il y a eu également une présentation très intéressante sur la diversité génétique. Et si j'ai bien compris les propos de l'oratrice, le fait qu'il y a réellement une urgence, notamment pour les éleveurs traditionnels, pour les petits éleveurs, pour les communautés pastorales, à vraiment préserver ce capital qui aide non seulement à améliorer les performances de production, mais on l'a vu également avec l'exemple du Canada, à limiter l'impact des externalités négatives comme l'impact sur l'environnement. Et puis on a eu une deuxième partie un peu différente, où on s'est davantage intéressé à la santé animale avec les questions de One Health, et sous ceci montrant que la santé animale, c'est bien sûr une meilleure biosécurité dans les élevages, le recours plus large à la vaccination, l'enjeu de l'antibiorésistance, la surveillance des agents pathogènes avec le risque de transmission vers l'homme, et que l'on doit effectivement trouver des réponses préventives plus adaptées de façon à agir plus rapidement. Et puis, santé animale ne peut pas être évoquée si on ne parle pas de bien-être des animaux. Et là aussi, on a vu que on ne s'intéresse pas à des choses, on s'occupe à des êtres vivants sensibles. Et à travers la présentation, on a bien vu comment là aussi ces considérations évoluaient en passant des concepts des 5 libertés aux 5 domaines, et puis aujourd'hui à ce qu'on appelle davantage One Welfare. Et j'espère que ces éléments permettront un jour, et quand je dis un jour, c'est rapidement, permettront que ces contraintes économiques qui sont souvent liées à la mise en œuvre des mesures de animal welfare seront un jour mieux considérées comme des atouts, et des atouts pour un système de production durable. Et puis les dernières présentations, aussi bien avec l'exemple des élevages laitiers ou d'élevage de volailles, ont montré aussi comment l'innovation, les nouvelles technologies permettent d'avoir maintenant des élevages de précision. Et là, c'est tout un domaine formidable, très encourageant pour l'avenir. Et pour conclure, je voudrais faire part de 3 éléments que j'ai retenus à travers les présentations qui ont été faites. Premièrement, l'importance de rester humble, mais ambitieux, de travailler ensemble, sans a priori, sans certitude, car nous avons beaucoup à apprendre les uns des autres, et de mettre ensemble, en synergie, nos expertises et nos réseaux, la coordination nationale ou interrégionale, notamment avec les communautés économiques régionales, qu'il ne faut pas oublier. Et ceci en vue de définir non pas un modèle unique, mais plutôt avoir une boîte à outils qui permettra à chacun justement d'avoir les outils les plus adaptés à sa situation et à son contexte particulier. Le deuxième élément que je retiens, c'est le fait qu'il faut absolument qu'on travaille sur l'éducation et l'enseignement. En tout cas, qu'on travaille davantage sur l'enseignement, aussi bien des vétérinaires que des animal health workers, de façon à ce que ces personnes ne soient pas uniquement intéressées soit par la production des bovins, soit par les animaux de compagnie. Il y a une diversité de l'élevage. On doit pouvoir trouver des emplois pour les jeunes, mais il faut que ces emplois soient attractifs, de façon à ce qu'ils ne soient pas attirés vers d'autres productions, et de façon à ce que les éleveurs de ces productions puissent avoir le soutien médical dont ils ont besoin, médical ou technique. Le troisième et dernier point, c'est l'importance, et tout le monde l'a souligné, explicitement ou implicitement, que l'élevage peut contribuer à atteindre les objectifs de développement durable de 2030. Et donc, ça doit absolument retenir l'attention des partenaires financiers, des institutions scientifiques pour continuer à améliorer les connaissances et accélérer l'innovation, parce que n'oublions pas ce que nous a dit le jeune éleveur Jésus. Les jeunes, ils n'attendent pas uniquement des solutions pour demain. Ils veulent qu'on pense à eux aujourd'hui. Alors il va falloir que nous passions des discours aux actes. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. And thanks to all our speakers throughout the afternoon. Can we give a big hand to everyone? And as we've been talking about throughout this afternoon about the One Health, One Welfare event afterward, this is beginning at 5 p.m. here in the Sheikh Zayed Center. One Health, One Welfare. Coordinator is the International Cooperation Committee of Animal Welfare of the China Association for the Promotion of International Agricultural Cooperation. And there's also the social mixing event. Don't miss that. That's a good networking event with interpretation, Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, Spanish, and that is on the 8th floor, starting at 6:30 p.m., going to 8:30. So please do keep that in mind. And also the hashtag Sustainable Livestock. If you heard anything great today, I hope you all learned something today. I certainly did. And I think it really was worth our time to be all together and to be exchanging ideas. So tomorrow, we will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp, starting with better nutrition. That's 9 a.m. sharp. Please be early with my co-host, Finlay Wynn. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow. Thank you. Merci, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Yes, you made it. Yeah.